welcome to the Knitted by Whitney YouTube channel. I am back with another pattern roundup video for you today. And this is one that I think is really appropriate for this time of year as we're transitioning from winter to spring. Now, here in Atlantic Canada, it has been a pretty dismal transition. We've had a lot of gray days, a lot of darkness, a lot of wet weather, sometimes snow, sometimes rain, sometimes both. And I've honestly been struggling a bit. I know some of my projects haven't been working out lately. I have been reading some books that I'm not really into lately, or I've been struggling to get into new ones. And I've just been finding myself searching for dopamine. And one of the things that I found to give me one of those little dopamine rushes recently was I purchased some new yarn. I happened upon Femme from the Mindful Creators. She was doing an oopsie sale for some of her yarns, and she happened to have these three beauties in stock. Now, these are her Soothing Suri base, and the color is Periwinkle. Now, I cannot believe that this is quote unquote oopsie yarn, because to me, these are stunning. I cannot get over how gorgeous the colors are, and I'm blown away by them. So this is how good the oopsie looks. I can only imagine how beautiful the non-oopsie perfect version looks. But I found myself purchasing some of her yarn, and it arrived the other day, and I am in love, as you can tell. And it kind of got me in the mindset to look at some patterns that are specifically for Mohair and Suri. So we all know Mohair and Suri are having a bit of a moment. I find every time I go on Ravelry or every time I look on Instagram, somebody is doing a project that involves holding a strand of lace weight fuzzy yarn. Most often Mohair, I don't see Suri as often, and that's usually because Suri tends to come in a shorter skein. You don't tend to get the same amount of yardage per grams, but I was very pleasantly surprised that Femme's Suri is the same length as what I would expect for a mohair yarn. So this is 65% baby Suri alpaca and 35% silk. Great silk content there. And it is 50 grams and 437 yards, which is typically what I would find in a mohair hank, not necessarily a Suri. A Suri you would typically only get maybe like 350, 360 yards. So I'm very pleasantly surprised because that opens more doors to what I can make with this yarn. And I thought I had something in mind. I couldn't quite find what I was looking for on my usual trawling through Ravelry, but I did find quite a few other patterns. And then the pattern that I had in mind came up randomly when I was looking for something totally different. So I did find the pattern that I intend to use this yarn with. It is on this list, and I will mention which one it is when we get to it. But I thought it'd be fun to put together a list of my top 25 Mohair and Suri knitting patterns. And I have divided my list into 3 sections. The first one is Mohair Moments. So these are going to be patterns that only use partly mohair, or mohair is held throughout, but it is not lost in the pattern. There's always going to be a section of the pattern where the mohair is on its own and it shines. The second section is going to be single Suri. So that will be patterns that only use one strand of either Suri or mohair yarn. So if you only have a limited amount and you want to make something that is a garment, but you don't want to have to hold it double, there'll be some patterns there. And then I will also have a section called Double Fluff, which is holding 2 strands of either mohair or Suri to create a finished garment. So I know when I typically buy mohair, and I think this is similar for a lot of other knitters, we're typically buying it to use in a pattern partnered with another yarn. So for me, the most recent garment that I made like that is the Dartmoor sweater by Kadri. I held a strand of mohair along with a strand of fingering for that project. And previous to that, I made my Lento sweater, which is the same combination, 1-strand fingering, 1-strand mohair. And I love those patterns, don't get me wrong, but, and you know, with my Lento, the mohair yarn does really shine because I organized my yarn that way so that the mohair would be the standout feature. But the patterns that I've chosen for this pattern roundup are going to be patterns where it is the fluffy yarn that is the star of the pattern. And even when the patterns are held double, it's not a pattern that would be a mohair and a fingering or sewing and a fingering. They are always patterns where it is meant to be 2 strands of fluffy yarn held together. So I've made some pretty conscious choices about the patterns that I've put on this list, and I'm really excited about them. So let's get into them, shall we? Starting off the Mohair Moment section is the As If Tee and As If Tee Light, both by Shay Johnson. I found the As If Tee ages ago, and as much as I really enjoy that one, the newly released As If Tee Light speaks more to what I would knit myself, because the original one uses worsted weight yarn and mohair held together in the piece to create this beautiful sheer section, and then you use intarsia to create that beautiful sweetheart neckline. And that's all well and good if you want to do your project really, really quickly, but I think I like the blend of the mohair and the fingering in the As If Tee Light. But both are really great options and would allow you to use just a little bit of mohair that you want to shine and make the pivotal section of your sweater to really show off your fluffy yarn. If you like the look of the As If Tee and the As If Tee Light, but you're not ready for intarsia, the Poisoned Apple Tee by Lily Kate France would be a great substitution, and I think this is another gorgeous top. This one has a little more frivolity to it than the As If Tee because it features those beautiful puffed sleeves that are made using some tuck stitches, and the whole silhouette is inspired by Snow White. And I absolutely adore that Molly from Ponder and Ply did a whole photo shoot wearing her version of this top as a Snow White photo shoot. It was so cute. And it really kind of brings the storytelling element of the top to life and really brings that out. I think this would be a great option if you just want to use a little bit of mohair. Maybe you don't have very much in your stash. Maybe you only have a skein or maybe even less than a skein. This one only features mohair used right on the collarbone area of the top, and the rest is made using DK weight yarn. This would be a really fun opportunity to either play with color changes using a very different colored mohair or suri from the rest of your garment yarn, or pick one that is really, really similar so you create this beautiful seamless piece. The next pattern on my list is the Olivia sweater by Veraned Rose. This is a pattern that has the same look as the As If Tee and the Poisoned Apple Tee. However, you're holding your mohair throughout the project, so you would need a bit more. This one was designed in honor of Liv of the Woolshed, who very sadly passed away last year, and I really feel like Alex of Veraned Rose outdid herself with this pattern. I think it's so beautiful. It's got some lovely detailing to it, and it just looks like a very fun top to make. I think the shape of it reminds me a lot of what I would typically see in a blouse made out of a woven material, so like a chiffon blouse or something like that. It has that same shaping and styling, but you get it out of knitwear, and I just think it's a really beautiful piece. The next pattern on this list, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, is the Diaphanous Raglan by Jessie Made Designs. I don't actually know how that word is pronounced. I've only ever seen it. I haven't actually heard it. So I hope that's the right way to pronounce it. But anyway, this is another gorgeous option that has a mohair moment, but instead of occurring on the body of the sweater, this one is all about mohair sleeves, and I'm a big fan of that. I love a sheer sleeve. I just think it looks so elegant, so put together, very feminine, very pretty, and just floaty, ethereal, like all of those types of vibes. And I really love that this one could either be made with short sleeves or long sleeves. So I have some yarn in my stash that I am saving up for this pattern, and I really love how you're going to use your mohair across the whole project, and then you just use it on the sleeves for mohair sleeves, but you can really blend your colors nicely. So the yarn that I have two variegated yarns. The mohair is variegated and the fingering weight yarn are variegated, but I think together they're going to create this really beautiful watercolor effect, and I'm very excited to see that work up in the project. I just have to knit it first. The only thing I will say about Jessie made patterns is, from what I've heard from others who have made her patterns, you really should have more than the recommended yarn amount for the size that you're making, because a lot of her patterns are quite short, and a lot of knitters that I've chatted with that have made her patterns always add length to them. So it would be a good idea to have a little extra yarn on hand so that you could lengthen the top if you would need to do so. Now, Mohair and Suri are not just meant for beautiful, elegant details. Sometimes they can just be there for the cozy factor, such as in the Big Cozy Cardi by Andrea Mowry. This pattern came out last year, and I have had an eagle eye on it ever since. I adore this pattern, and I really, really, really want to make it. I don't have yarn in my stash that I think I would like for it, so I'm just waiting until the right yarn comes along, because I think I would really want this in a neutral, but I don't quite know what I want yet. I really love all of the different variations I've seen in the pattern samples of this, because I have seen testers that have done almost the exact same color for the mohair collar and then the DK weight body. I've also seen people that have done almost contradictory colors, and that way the collar really stands out against the body. Sometimes they're congruous colors, they just blend really nicely together, or one's a variegated and one's a tonal. There's so many different options, and they all look beautiful. I just can't quite decide what I like the most for me. And this is a bit of an endeavor project because it is quite a large, oversized project, but I love that it looks really nice on all of the different sizes. My next pattern that I want to share with you doesn't just use a mohair or a Suri yarn, it also uses another specialty yarn, a slubby yarn. This is the Alder Grove by Samantha Guerin, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. This pattern is one that I found when I was looking for patterns right before I made my Lento sweater, when I only had a small amount of mohair to use, and I was looking for a pattern that would work with it. And I put this in the back of my mind because I knew I loved the look of it. I just didn't want to make it with the mohair that I had at the time. But I really love the look of this sweater because you could pick one color for both of your yarns, your mohair or Suri and your slubby knit yarn, and create something that has this beautiful textural element to it simply by using these two different types of yarn. I think it's a really great way of playing with texture and playing with the look of stripes without having different colored stripes. I have seen at least one example in the tester photos of somebody who did use two different colors, but I don't like it as much as I do the one color all the way through with the two different yarns. But it is a personal choice. If you do want to use two different colors, you could absolutely do that. I just really like the monochrome look to it. And I think that this would be really, really fun in a color that just like demands to be looked at. I'm thinking like a hot pink or like a neon yellow or neon orange, something like that. Something that would just be really bright and out there. And then you're playing with the texture elements, so it gives you a lot of depth to your project. But you can choose any color you like for it. Now we're moving on to the single Suri section, and these are patterns that use one strand of either Suri or mohair yarn, and I think this is the largest section in this video, so this will be the bulk of the patterns in this video, and that's mainly because I was looking for a pattern that uses one strand of Suri or mohair to make something with. The first pattern that I have in this list is one that I am lusting after. I do already have it because I bought the publication that it's in. It is Cloud Bow by Reed Keys. This is one that I have seen so many versions of. I love them all. It looks fabulous on everybody of all sizes. The one that sticks out in my mind is my friend B of Maker Bee. They made one in some really gorgeous Suri yarn that was hot pink, yellow, and I think a little bit of beige. And it just looks stunning. Love it so much. But I also love that this is one that could be something that you just throw on over a t-shirt and jeans if you want just like a really fun sort of like rocker look, or wear a nice slip underneath and make it a very elegant dress to wear out. I love the possibilities of how you could style this outfit. I think, for me, the dress really draws me in, but the top would also be really beautiful. And you have options because you have 2 different garments in one pattern. The next pattern plays with mostly mohair or suri and then has a little detail of a fingering weight yarn. This is the Chainmail Blouse by Celine Phaeton. I hope I pronounced correctly. This is one that instantly stood out to me when I was looking through different patterns on Ravelry. I had already kind of put all of my favorites that I had been stockpiling for a while into this list, and I was just looking for a few to round out the numbers. And I really love this one. It really appeals to me because I love a Peter Pan collar. This is something that sort of became really stylish when I was in about high school, maybe early university. And I really love the look of it. I think it looks really fun. I think it looks girly without being too like frilly blouse girly. I think it has a nice element of cool girl vibe to it as well. And I just think it looks so pretty. I love that this blouse also incorporates a little bit of texture with the mohair, because it would be very simple to knit stockinette mohair or suri, but this one plays around with the texture element as well, and I really like that factor. I think it adds a little bit of extra to this blouse. Similar to the chainmail blouse, but pushing things a little bit further is this next pattern, which is Plumatis by Julie Knits in Paris. I adore this pattern. I have been lusting after it for ages. This is another one from the issue of Pom Pom that also featured the cloud bow. And I think I have 3 patterns on this list that all came from that same issue, and we will miss Pom Pom so much. But I'm so happy to have this issue. I think it's one of my favorite Pom Pom issues that I have seen, and I'm definitely going to knit quite a few patterns out of it, including this one, which is the Plumatis. I have plans for this one. I have yarn for this one. I am very excited to make it because to me, this is mohair on show, or suri on show. It is so beautiful, and that is really the star of the show because it has this beautiful ethereal lace patterned texture throughout the whole top. And it's capped off with another cute little Peter Pan style collar, but it's not exactly a Peter Pan style collar. It's a little different. It has some other details to it, and I just think that this is absolutely beautiful. I think, who was it that I saw that knitted one that was just absolutely beautiful? I can't remember their name or their handle, but I remember that it was green. So I'll put that photo in here to show you which one I'm thinking of that I loved so much. But I'm going to be making mine in mustard yellow, which is one of my favorite colors. And I'm very, very excited to knit that one up because I know I will get so much wear out of it. I know it's the type of top that I would either wear to work, or I would wear it out on a coffee date with a friend, or on a date night with Doyle. And I also know that I would get so much wear out of it with pieces that I already have in my wardrobe. So that one might be a summer cast on this year, and I'll get that all done up for the fall. Hopefully, we'll see. The next pattern I'm going to talk about is a set of patterns. I like to lump these ones together. This is not the first time I've talked about them in a video, but they are the Ghost Whisperer and Phantom Fuzz, both by Park Williams. And I like to talk about these together because to me, they evoke the same feeling. They're just slightly differently shaped. They have different styles to them, but they both use one strand of mohair or suri, and it is the same sort of gauge of the yarn, so you get the same level of see-throughness. It's not really a word, but you know what I mean. So the Ghost Whisperer features some really big puffy sleeves, and it is a t-shirt style. It's a cropped t-shirt style, and I think this one is great if you only have a little bit of mohair or suri on hand. I think depending on the size that you make, you can get away with one skein, depending on your size. I don't think I could get away with one. I think I would need two. But for some of the smaller sizes, you would only need one. And then for the Phantom Fuzz, I think I could get away with two skeins for my size in that one. So that's another one that you don't need a lot of yarn to get through these two patterns. And I feel like they both offer a really fun element to your wardrobe by being something that you could wear over another thing. So I've seen a lot of examples of the Ghost Whisperer being worn over some really skinny strapped dresses or tops, or a bandeau or a bralette, especially a hand knitted one. That's a really great look. I love that. I've seen that many times. And Phantom Fuzz, I think I would probably wear over just like a tank top, either a white one to blend in underneath, or maybe even a brightly colored one, especially if you've chosen maybe a more neutral yarn for your Phantom Fuzz top. You could play around by wearing like maybe a neon tank top underneath. I think that'd be really fun. But these are really nice layering pieces to have in your wardrobe, and they don't have to be the top layer. I've also seen some examples where people have worn the Phantom Fuzz or the Ghost Whisperer underneath a dress or a tank top or something like that. And I just think it's a really fun look. It's definitely something that I want to try as well, so I'll look into that. The next pattern on my list is the Bad Idea blouse by Lacey Williamson. Now, I've been following Lacey since I found her ribbed to your measure dress, which is on my list of things to make, and I have yarn for it. And I think I remember her starting out the Bad Idea blouse maybe in the summer, maybe even before that. She just thought about putting together a top using one strand of Mohair Suri yarn and then trying it again with double strand. And it just really worked. She really loved the fit and the shaping and everything. And so she just developed a pattern. As far as I know, though, this one hasn't been tested or anything. It was just she had this idea, she developed the pattern, and she released it. So keep in mind, if you want to make this pattern, that it really is about playing around. You might not get exactly what you expect, but I think that that's kind of a fun element to it because it really was just an off-the-cuff pattern that Lacey wrote up. And it is a great way to use up some mohair if you just want a really fun laid-back top. You could do it with short sleeve, long sleeve, cropped, long. Just keep in mind that you're going to be playing around a bit, so maybe have some extra yarn on hand just in case you need to add some more. And this one can be knit with either a single strand or double strand. You'll just get a different level of see-throughness depending on if you use one or two strands. The next pattern on my list is the Made You Dream blouse by Ocean Knits. This is another very feminine, kind of fairy tale inspired piece. I really love the style of this one because this is really up my alley. This is what I like to wear. I am a feminine dresser, but I really love that this one could also be used if you needed a historical piece. I am thinking maybe if you're going to a Ren fair, or if, like me, you're trying to cosplay a character from a Renaissance themed movie, like Ever After. I'm still working away at that. I'll get to it at some point. But this would be a fun option for that because you could have a really fun piece that I think would really hug your body quite nicely. Because this pattern, although I have put in the range of sizes as best that I could figure them out, this one adds a lot of customization. So this pattern requires a little extra work compared to a pattern that tells you step by step what to do, because this one you're doing a lot of self-measurement and a lot of working with some math and some ratios. It's not impossible, it can be done. And this one allows you to have a huge variety of bust to underbust sizing changes. So something that I really like about this pattern is that there is a lot of customization based on your exact body type. So there are, I don't know how many numbers, but the bust size can range anywhere from 0 inches to 17-inch difference from the underbust, which love that customization, love that level of detailing. And I just think that the work that it takes to get it to fit you is totally going to be worth it. The next pattern on my list, which I hope I'm going to pronounce correctly, is the Orchida or Orchidea by Anna Johanna. And I hope I pronounced that correctly as well. If not, I do apologize. This one just looks so beautiful to me. It has this really lovely gauge. This one you're using a smaller needle, so you're using your Mohair or Suri, but not intended to be something that is very clearly see-through. This one is knit at a tighter gauge, and I just love the texture detailing on this top. I love that line running up the back of the sweater. Of course, I love that beautiful V of texture on the back with the motif. And I just think it's a really beautiful piece. I think it's something that I would get a lot of wear out of. I would wear that with a lot of skirts or over dresses. I love the shaping of it. I just think it's stunning. And this one I kind of found completely by accident, and I'm so glad I did. The next pattern on my list is the Trilo Tee by Sachiko Bergen, or Bergen. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I do apologize if I did not. Now, I know I usually like a top-down sweater, but this one is a bottom-up sweater, and I am including it anyway because I just love that flowery scalloped detail on the hem of the body and the sleeves, and you cannot get that detail without knitting it from the bottom up. Now, I'm sure if somebody really, really wanted to, they could reverse engineer it and do it the opposite way, but I don't have a head for doing that myself, but I would suffer through the bottom up because I really love those edging details. Now, from what I can tell, looking at the pattern samples, I think with this one, you want to be sure you either pick something with neutral ease or maybe even a little bit of negative ease, because it looks like most of the pattern samples are a little oversized. So if you want something more fitted, maybe size down for this one. But I just love the look of it. I think it's beautiful, and I think it might be worth knitting bottom up just so you could have that beautiful detailing. The next pattern on my list is a free pattern. This one is the Dust Bunny by Beata Jezik. I do apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, but I really love this one. This is done by Hedgehog Fibers, and this is another one that does not use a lot of fluffy yarn. So this one technically uses alpaca boucle, which is a little fuzzier than a mohair or a suri, because instead of having the loose fibers just straight on the yarn, they're done in a bit of a loop. So you have your strand of silk, and as it's bringing the mohair with it, or the alpaca in this case, it's looping it around. So there's all these little loops, which I know that would drive me nuts to knit with because I would miss the proper strand to catch as the stitch, and I would probably just catch one of those little loops. But you could easily substitute another fluffy yarn. You might just need a little bit more than what the pattern suggests because you might not get as much volume from a mohair or a suri yarn. But it depends, because some suri yarns are actually quite thick and would really knit up nicely. Now this one I love simply because it's a great layering piece, and it's going to be perfect for spring weather, even into the summer weather, if you just need that little bit of extra coziness on top. And I just love this one because it has that really basic open cardigan shape, and I feel like I would get a lot of wear out of this. It's really my style. In the same style as the Dust Bunny, but with a little bit more customization to it, is this next pattern, the Beachy Breezy Cardi by Knitting Tipsy. I adore Knitting Tipsy. She is one of my favorite people to follow. Chelsea has now become one of my internet friends, which is so lovely. And I really wanted to share this design as well as the Dust Bunny because I feel like even though they are a similar style, they serve slightly different purposes, and Chelsea's pattern offers a bit of customization that's not available in the Dust Bunny pattern. So Chelsea's pattern, you could do short sleeves, long sleeves, you could do a crop style, you could do a long style, you could do this really cute little bolero that's going to keep you cozy when you go out on a date over a dress, or you can make a really long version and it could kind of be like a robe that you put on if you go to the beach for the day and you just want to be cozy at the bonfire at nighttime. So many great options, and I love those nice loose sleeves as well. I know that those would just be really nice and floaty in a mohair or a suri yarn, and I just see so many options for this pattern. The next pattern is Solasta by Kindred Red, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. This is a fun one if you have some mohair or suri that you want to use, but you also have some fingering weight scraps you want to use. I shared this one before in one of my Advent patterns video, but I feel like it's worth bringing it out again for this pattern roundup because the mohair or the suri is the star of this sweater, and I really feel like it would be a fun way to use some fluffy yarn that you have while also knitting through some of your scraps. I think this one would also be a great option if you want to use a very particular color combo. So this one's really fun in the pattern sample because the mohair itself is sort of like a neutral beigey peachy color, but then the ribbed cuffs and hem and neckline are all done using a neon yellow yarn, and then all of the scrap pieces are little bits of neon yarn. I just think that's a really fun color combo, but you can use any color combo that you enjoy. This next pattern is going to test my French pronunciation. It is Coquille by Emma Duché. I hope I pronounced correctly. This one is super cute because it has a lace pattern meant to mimic a scallop shell or a coquille. And it is so cute. And I think it's really precious in a fluffy yarn. I think that's what makes it look so much more fun and elegant because you already have sort of a floaty loose gauge from using a fluffy lace weight yarn, and then you're adding those lace details to create the shells as well. I just think it also adds some fun to a cardigan and gives you a little bit of visual interest as well. And I'm sure you could find some buttons somewhere that look like little scallop shells and keep the motif going. Now we've gotten pretty far through this list and I still haven't told you which pattern I'm using with my Mindful Creators yarn. And this is the pattern I'm going to be using for it. The Zoja Wrap Cardigan by Verandah Rose. I have loved this pattern ever since Alex released it, I think 2 years ago now, maybe 3. And I had originally planned to knit this as my wedding cardigan, but I wasn't prepared to take on testing this pattern as something for my wedding. I didn't want that level of pressure, and I just couldn't test it at the time that it was coming up. So I shelved it knowing that I wanted to make it, and I did buy it after it was released. And I'm finally ready to make it with my Mindful Creators yarns. I just think that wraparound style with the slight bit of texture detailing to it is going to shine in this Suri yarn. And I know that I will get so much wear out of it in this particular color. I can already picture all the things I'm going to wear it with in my wardrobe. And now we've made it to the final section of the video, which is double fluff. These are all patterns that use 2 strands of fluffy yarn. Starting with what I'm wearing, the Soufflé by Laura Penrose. I can't get through a pattern roundup without gushing about one of Laura's patterns, and I think I've shared the Soufflé one the most because it's one of my favorite patterns that I've ever knitted. It's definitely one of my most worn pieces in my hand knit wardrobe, and it's a great option if you want to use 2 strands of mohair or suri held together. So this one has a section that uses just 1 strand and then the rest uses 2 strands. So you do need a fair amount of mohair or suri, but the effect is worth it. So the top section of the circular yoke uses 1 strand of mohair or suri. I happen to use an alpaca cloud silk lace. So this was a lace weight alpaca, but it wasn't quite as fluffy as mohair or suri, but I got the same effect. And then the rest of the piece uses double strand. Now I have knit 2 of these patterns, and I have learned that the pattern is designed to use a fluffy yarn because my second version I made using a tencel yarn, which is a plant-based yarn that does not have the same memory as an animal fiber, and it doesn't have the fluff to hold it up, and I cannot wear that one without having something on underneath because the sheer section comes a little too low, if you know what I mean. So that one I always have to wear something underneath, but this one is absolutely fine because that that segmentation between the sheer section and the opaque section comes up higher and much more comfortable for daily wear, in my opinion. And this is another pattern that I will always want to remake. It's one that I'm always going to keep in mind as one that I know I get a lot of wear out of, and anytime I buy some really beautiful Mohair Suri yarn, I'm going to think to myself, can I make a souffle with it? Because I love this pattern so much, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. My next pattern is Ombre by Tanis Fiber Arts. And this one I just think is going to be a cozy cardigan. It's got 2 strands of mohair or suri held together just to create this beautiful classic V-neck cardigan. And I just feel like this would be so comfy. It would be a great option for spring because you don't necessarily want a thick sweater in springtime or in summer as well. And I feel like this one, especially in the colors that Tanis used in her sample, they just scream Easter to me. Like there's some muted pinks and some little specks of blue, and it just looks so lovely. And it's just a nice classic style that you would get a lot of wear out of in your wardrobe. Now this next pattern is another one that's going to test my French pronunciation, and this is Mousseux by Espace Tricot, and I do hope I pronounced that correctly. This one used to be available as a free pattern. It is now only available in an ebook of 10 patterns. However, they are only $10. So you get 10 patterns for $10, including this one, the Mousseux. And I just think this would be a beautiful classic style. This is one that I love the look of. I love a nice puff sleeve. I love that boat neckline. I just feel there's so much about this that I would get a lot of wear out of personally. So I really love this pattern. I think it's a very versatile piece and one that is just a classic stockinette pattern, but it has beautiful details that really set it apart. For my penultimate pattern on this list, I have Instant Crush by Joji Locatelli. This pattern took off like a shot last year, I think, maybe the year before. But as soon as this pattern came out, people were going crazy for it because I don't think I've seen many other options of color work done exclusively in a fluffy weight yarn. And how cool does it look? Now, this is one that's great if you have some mohair scraps hanging around and you need to use a variety of colors together. So this one uses a palette of about 3 or 4 colors, but I feel like you could play around with as many colors as you like and just use up those scraps that you have. This is another one that they're held double throughout. However, you're going to get a lot of mileage because you're using different colors. This one is just really fun. It's really unexpected for a mohair or a suri pattern as well, and I think that's what I like about it. It's not what you expect. Now, the last pattern on my list is not for the faint of heart, but my goodness, would it be worth it? This is the Oniero by Herb Garden Knitwear, and I do hope I pronounced that correctly. This one just screams cozy. However, it's quite the yarn guzzler because not only are you using your mohair held double, you're also knitting brioche. And not just any type of brioche, you are fading brioche from one side of the cardigan to the other. But my goodness, does it look worth it. I love the look of this sweater. I just love Hannah's designs. She has so much attention to detail. She really focuses in on the fit of a pattern. And I just think this one is beautiful. It's such a standout piece. It's one that does take quite a lot of time. Brioche does take quite a while, but the result is just pure squish. And can you imagine that squish as mohair or suri? Like, this stuff is already crazy soft. But if you're holding 2 strands together and then you're doing brioche, which is double stitching, it just would create a pillow of clothing. Not even a pillow, a cloud. You'd be wearing a cloud cardigan. How amazing would that be? So if you are really into getting rid of a lot of mohair or suri that you have in your stash, and you just want the coziest cardigan, this is it. And that wraps up my list of my top 25 mohair and suri patterns. I really hope you found something that you liked in this list, or if you see something that a friend of yours might like, maybe pass this video on to them. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for joining me, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. It would help my channel if while you're here you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell icon to be notified about my latest videos. I hope you all take care and happy knitting!